Hi everybody, welcome to another Chris EV Road Trips video. Today I've got the two Ians with me. So Ian Bennett from the Gold Coast, hey, how are you tonight?
I'm really good, Chris. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, and Ian from Infinite Planet here in Sydney. How are you tonight, Ian?
Quite good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. So what we're going to talk about tonight is the BYD is bringing a lot of, or planning to bring more hybrids to the market like Toyota are. So my question is going to be, are plug-in hybrids a interim step to EVs pending infrastructure and new battery technology? So with I think 2 more days to the BYD SeaLion 6 is going to be released in the Australian market. So it could be a big hybrid seller. So the big question I think people want to know is its main competitor is the RAV4, and what's the difference between the RAV4 hybrids, which technology has been around for years, and what BYD are claiming to be groundbreaking hybrid technology. So Ian Bennett, you better take this one.
He's more about crosses.
Yeah. So the difference in the types of plugins between Toyota and BYD.
Well, Toyota doesn't offer plug-in hybrids in Australia. They do have them overseas, but they're not that happy with the technology, and they're looking at moving to the BYD technology for plug-in hybrids. Right. But the idea of the plug-in hybrid is, in theory, you can drive it as a full-on EV around the city, and then on a long road trip, have the range and ability to refuel of a petrol car.
So that's like the Mitsubishi.
That's very much like the Mitsubishi. The closest in Australia at the moment is the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid.
So Chris, just going back to what your question is your question both a recommendation and a question? In other words, are you recommending you don't buy an EV and you get a plug-in hybrid instead? Because I can't agree with that. I think if you buy an EV, and if you really don't want to buy an EV, maybe you could look at a hybrid. That's my view.
It depends who your audience is. Like, we all own EVs, and we all know we're all happy with our EVs. But people who own petrol cars, they're very cautious about changing to an EV.
Yeah, but the idea is you should look if a EV suits you. But if you're not sure and you're not feeling confident, these are an option.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, I believe BYD and Toyota target this particular group of people, and they believe it's a big market. For me, I'm not so sure, but if they say it's a big market, it must be a big market. So,
well, statistically, 90% of new cars sold in Australia at the moment aren't EVs.
There you go. It's a big market. Yeah. So what I've seen from the limited research I've done on the BYD system, it seems to be better than what Toyota have. Am I right in saying that, Ian Ogilvy?
It certainly takes you more to be able to try and use it as an EV when you want to, which the Toyota doesn't really let you.
Yeah, because from my understanding, the Toyotas that they have now in Australia, they're running on the nickel metal hydride 4 kilowatt-hour battery pack. Is that something about what they are?
They dream of 4 kilowatt hours.
Do they?
1.8, I think.
1.8, and you can't actually drive to the petrol station on EV on electric mode to get petrol.
Possibly could if it was a very close petrol station and you wanted to stay under about 3 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, where the BYD technology, they're saying 90, 80 to 100 Ks on battery alone. Is that right?
Yeah, but I think on battery alone around the city, you'll certainly get 80 kilometers.
Yeah.
So reversing this question a little bit, Chris.
Yep.
What would be the reasons for someone not to want to dive in straight into an EV?
Look, from people I speak to I've got my EV crowd, and then I've got people I know who own EVs, and then I've got people that don't own EVs and have never really entertained the thought of having an EV, and they're completely kind of like, nah, I wouldn't have one of those cars, sort of thing. So from a performance perspective, how's the SeaLion 6 going to compare with the RAV4? So I'll just pop a picture of that up, and
Yep,
here it is.
yep. Well, the RAV4 would be the closest competitor in some. RAV4 hybrid would be the closest competitor in some way, and the benefit of a hybrid based on an EV rather than a hybrid which is basically taking starting from an ICE car and adding the hybrid technology. The SeaLion 6 is basically starting from an EV and adding a petrol engine that's a generator that allows you to drive further. So you're actually driving an EV. So it feels like an EV. It has the better performance of an EV. So if you look at the specifications, for example, the RAV4 starts with a 2.5 litre petrol engine and then adds electricity to it. And with a 2.5 litre engine starting point, it takes 8.1 seconds 0 to 100k. You take the equivalent SeaLion, which has only a 1.5 litre engine, but a lot more electric motors because the electric motors are the main drive, and it does that same 0 to 100 in 6.5 seconds.
Okay, that's quite respectable.
So, I have a question. The BYD, the engine, does it ever drive the wheels directly?
It can, but it's basically designed as a range extender. So as a range extender, it works as a generator primarily, but there's a mode where it can bring in to drive the wheels when you're driving on the highway. It can't do it when you're taking off and accelerating. That 0 to 100 time can't drive the wheels with the petrol motor because it can't start driving from the petrol motor. It can only kick in the petrol motor to be driving the wheels when you're cruising on the highway, basically.
And what makes it? So you're cruising on the highway. Do you press a button to get that engine to take over, or does it automatically do it?
It has an automatic thing where it cuts in to do it. And if you put your foot down, it puts your foot down hard enough, it cuts out and switches over to electric again.
Well, that's different. So the question, Chris, that you've asked is whether this would be sufficient for somebody who's a bit, who's not convinced to do EV direct. Whether this would be an interim measure.
Yeah, well, let's a person drive it on petrol all the time, but the feeling of driving an EV, even though you're petrol powered, and to have the ability to just fill up with petrol instead of plug in. So if you have any doubts about can you find a place to plug in, if you're not sure whether you'll have infrastructure or access to charging, then you just fill it up with petrol and away you go.
So here's another question. If you don't have a charger and you never charge it, would you be able to get a full battery just from the engine?
Yes, you can. So it has a mode where you prioritize it to use to keep using the petrol motor until the battery is fully charged. But it also has a mode where it won't kick in the generator until the battery drops down to 20%.
And you're saying this is very similar to what the Mitsubishi Outlander has?
The Mitsubishi is quite similar. The trouble for Mitsubishi is, of course, that they don't have an EV. So they had to build this technology on a car that was based on an ICE car. So, and whenever you build an EV on the body of an ICE car, it ends up a bit compromised and more expensive than it should be otherwise.
Yeah.
So when we go to our BYD dealer next week and we go for a test drive, we should expect this car to be more faster than a RAV4, hopefully cheaper than a RAV4, and a bit more spacious than a RAV4.
And faster than Atto 3.
And faster than an Atto 3, yes.
And bigger than Atto 3.
And bigger than the Atto 3.
Ooh,
and potentially even it's the four-wheel drive one that's faster. The two-wheel drive version is not quite as fast as the Atto 3.
Right. So we're probably going to guess that the one that's two-wheel drive is probably going to be around the same price as Atto 3, maybe cheaper, and the performance one's probably going to be dearer than the Atto 3.
Not necessarily. I've got the data from the UAE where they have the same cars. They have the Atto 3. They have they call it the Song Plus there, which it's also called the Song Plus very confusingly in China.
Yeah.
It appears to be one of two cars called the Song Plus, where they're both the same car under the skin, but there's two different skins. There's an Ocean Series skin, and you notice all the bubbles and the fact that this is all drawn Ocean Series, but the Song Plus is normally a Dynasty Series car. And in China, there are two sets of dealers, one for Dynasty Series, one for Ocean Series. But anyway, this is the same car, very much from everything I can see, the exact same specs, two versions we get. I've also got a copy of the spec sheet for Australia there, and it matches up pretty much exactly with the UAE specs.
And with
UAE, they've released the pricing, and the pricing, even of the four-wheel drive, is cheaper than the Atto 3.
Whoa, that's going to be pretty exciting for the car market because more performance, cheaper price.
Yep.
So,
if it holds here as well.
Yeah. Oh well, I'm looking forward to what is it, Thursday night, to find out what it is.
Now we say that, but the Atto 3 has sort of informally been dropping in price a bit. It's got an official price, and then people have been buying them for a lot less than the official price lately. And the price has moved down a bit in China, and at some point they may move the price of the Atto 3 down here too, because batteries are getting cheaper.
Yep.
Yep.
So back to the original question is so do you think this car is this going to be something that's going to last a few years, plug-in hybrids, or do you think it's going to be a long transition? Like, could it be 10 years before we transition that these hybrids are going to be popular, or is it going to be something that could last a long time?
Well, that's one of the appeals of the plug-in hybrid, that everything's being electrified. Not long ago, there were only a few hybrids on the market. Now almost every vehicle seems to be coming out with a hybrid. What's the one I saw? The Porsche 911 is coming out with a hybrid. So everything's moving in this direction of adding more electric. The plug-in hybrid adds as much electric as you can add while still having all the benefits of having a petrol car, in the sense of you can fill up on petrol, you can run on petrol, you can get fuel anywhere you can get petrol, but you can also drive it as an EV.
So I've got a question.
Yep.
I've got a question going back to the UAE.
UAE?
Yeah. So sales over there of Atto 3s compared with the BYD Song Plus, which one sells the most?
I don't know. And I would say that even though this is up on the website and it's now for sale, I doubt they've had a month of sales.
Okay.
I would imagine petrol will be quite cheaper in those sort of areas.
They seem to have a bit of oil around.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so back to the main question is people that don't really have confidence in EVs, and they're worried about depreciation, and they're thinking that we know battery technology is just improving. are they going to be more likely to buy this sort of car than not buy EVs? Ian Bennett, what do you think?
I don't know. I'm a bit surprised at the spec of the Song Plus. It's a lot better than what I thought. I particularly like driving an EV, and I've got infrastructure at home that is not an issue for me to to have a full-time EV. But there are people that can't charge at home, and there are people that want to do long trips. So for the people that don't want to buy an EV for specific reasons, such as what we spoke about before, which was the availability of infrastructure, the infrastructure reliability, and whether EVs are going to improve and the prices are going to come down, and all these other things, and the political thing as well, I suppose. But I don't know, mate. I'd like to drive one to see.
Yeah, because when I talk to people who don't know anything about cars or EVs, they're very hesitant to want to buy an EV, but they're quite happy to buy hybrids. So I think that market maybe I think BYD could be onto something here that we don't understand it, and that's
well. I mean, I can understand the idea that people are nervous. They haven't done it. They haven't tried it.
Yeah.
So if they can sort of have one foot in each camp, maybe that helps. A buying car that you can treat exactly like you treat your petrol car if you want to, but you can drive it like an EV around the city. You could, in theory, get away with, because if you've got at least 80 kilometres of range on electric charge, if you've got the ability to plug into a power point at home, then you can be running a lot cheaper than any petrol car around the city just using the power from home. Never having to worry about public charges, because anytime you're out and away from home, you can use petrol if you don't know where to find a charger.
Yeah.
And you've got this idea that since cars are getting more, it is clear that they're getting more and more electric. Now, there's an argument, Toyota has said that not everyone will ever go electric, that maybe they'll stop at hybrid. But even Toyota is moving to this type of hybrid, at least in China, and buying the technology from BYD to do it, it seems. Or that's been suggested is happening. I don't think the ink's dry yet, but that's the plan.
Sure. Yeah, because I could see that in Sydney we have a lot of people who live in, like most big cities, a lot of units and a lot of people who park on off-street parking. So I think those people are probably less inclined to want to buy an EV because they're worried about having to go to a charger and leave their car there and wait for the charger to charge. So I think that sort of market would
probably... Yeah, there's people who live in a house where they can charge at the moment, but they're not sure they might move. And what if they can't charge at the next house?
Yeah.
Or vice versa, that they can't charge at the moment, but they might be able to later. So you can have a car that covers both scenarios.
So when people say to me that they're not ready for an EV, not all of them, but some of them say because they're too complicated. Because and I think the petrol cars, they've still got cruise control and all that sort of stuff, but they seem, with a big screen and you got to have this setting, that setting. Particularly, and no offence to the female audience, but particularly wives seem to be, and mine in particular, don't want to go near them because they say it's too complicated to drive. Do you think these hybrids are going to solve that problem?
Well, I mean, there's still really, I have trouble seeing the difficulty in driving EVs. I mean, Tesla do work on the fact that they give you a different feel in driving an EV, whereas BYD tend to make the cars feel almost like driving a petrol car.
No, I was thinking more a little
bit responsive.
I was thinking more of the configuration and the screen, all the different settings you can do.
But are they that different with the latest cars anyway?
Yeah.
I mean, the Toyota has a screen that's a similar size in the RAV4. It's a little bit smaller, but they're moving to bigger ones.
It's a perception, so the perception is out there.
Yeah.
So do you think that the hybrids will be able to dispel that perception?
that's hard to say because it's perception, not reality. So it's hard to judge what people perceive, I think. But
yeah, to me, it seems more complicated, but to the average person, it's more something that they already know. So
you mean the hybrid seems more complicated?
I'm sorry?
You mean to you the hybrid seems more complicated?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm not the average person because I'm an early adopter of EV technology. So,
but in the end, every petrol car has an alternator and a starter motor, which are effectively two electric motors, really. One's just operating in generator mode, and you just beef those up, and you've got a hybrid. You need to add a high voltage battery for even a Prius, but other than that, you've just beefed up the components and shrunk the petrol engine a bit. So it's not that different.
So
these EV first hybrids have simplified things, which gives you more car for the money quite often. So you are paying for the battery, but then you're not paying for a gearbox. There's no gearbox in it.
Wow. Oh, that's one less thing to go wrong.
Well, it's quite a big thing when you look at the size of I've seen a pull down of the size of a gearbox in a car like a RAV4. They're big. There's a lot to them.
So what would need to happen? So people say, I don't want to get an EV, forgetting about the complication side of it. But there's various reasons why they don't want to get an EV, and we'll forget about the political one for the moment. So it's infrastructure. What needs to happen in the real world for EVs to be more acceptable to those who are skeptical? Do batteries need to go for longer distances? We need better infrastructure. I mean, what are the things that need to happen for EVs to be accepted, by the majority of people?
I think it's a bit of the fear of the unknown. So for me, look. One of the big complaints is, you're going to have to stop and charge when you drive to Queensland or something like that. So yeah, range is a big deal, I guess. Everybody thinks about range as a problem. So
if a battery came out or a manufacturer came out with a sensibly priced EV that had a range of 1,000 kilometres, would that solve what people are thinking, or is there more than that?
Well, that's one issue that they can't complain that they may not be able to complain about anymore because not many people do 1,000 kilometres.
And what are the others?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think price. I think like so. This could be going up against the model. Could be taking buyers from the Model Y if it's as fast as what we're saying. It's a 0 to 100 6.5 seconds, which is probably Model Y sort of territory. And if it's 10 or 15,000 cheaper than a Model Y, would a buyer sort of go, I don't really want to have full electric, and I'll just take this and pocket the 15,000?
Yeah, but
what are you thinking? As Ian Bennett, do you think people that might want to consider buying Model Y are a bit worried about buying an EV and buy this hybrid instead?
So probably yes. So if you are going to buy an EV, then you wouldn't buy the hybrid. So is it going to take people who are going to buy a Tesla Model Y, made up their mind to buy one, to rethink? I don't think that's going to happen. But those who aren't going to buy an a full EV, will look around for alternatives and say, well, how can I make the transition? And this may be a good one for that. But I'd like to understand what else for these people that say, I don't want to buy a full EV, I want to buy something as an interim. Why? So one of the reasons was range. The next one, I'd imagine, was infrastructure. So the infrastructure would have to be such that they could just go down the road and fill up, and probably fill up to full in about 20 minutes. Is that fair enough? I mean, if you had a range of 1,000, you'd fill up in 20 minutes at the local wherever, petrol station or whatever. would that take away the scepticism from EVs, or are there other things?
Well, I think that Chris pretty much nailed it with the fear of the unknown. I mean, who wants to spend, if you're used to filling up a petrol car, you don't want to spend 20 minutes filling up if you think it's the same sort of filling up as a petrol car. Until you learn that it's just a different experience with an EV, and it's more like charging your phone, where, you know, most phones you don't charge in 20 minutes. They take longer than that even. And you don't wait till they get flat before you charge them again.
But when you go to a service station and you fill up, you're spending $100 and something.
Yeah.
But when you spend 20 minutes to put electricity, you're not spending $100 and something.
No, but you really, people don't spend it, and they've got to learn a different behaviour, because you don't spend 20 minutes doing it. I mean, if I'm getting a 20-minute charge, it's while I'm at the supermarket for 20 minutes. Otherwise, you're charging at home normally.
So you guys are saying it's got nothing to do with the infrastructure, it's got nothing to do with the sales of the battery, it's just purely people not wanting to put their toe in the water?
No, I think that all of those factors are there, but they don't even understand the infrastructure and the range properly is what gives them, is part that builds that fear that makes them not ready. Whereas you've got this plug-in hybrid that's got a range of over 1,000 kilometres, and you just put petrol in it when you want to, but you can drive it like an EV. I mean, if, you know, the three of us all drive EVs. And I think for us, we're not interested because we don't want to go to a petrol station again. Once you've got used to an EV, you really don't want to bother visiting a petrol station ever again. But if you haven't made that jump, I mean, this could leave a lot of people thinking they're ready to make that second jump. But at the moment, 90% of people in Australia who are buying new cars are buying something that you put petrol or diesel in. For anything other than really big four-wheel drives and utes, diesel's sort of really on the way out, which was the most economical thing. And what's coming in to replace the diesels very much is hybrids. And hybrids are really popular. I believe the RAV4 hybrid outsells the other models of the RAV4, despite it costing more.
So
with RAV4 sales, what sort of numbers are we talking per year in Australia for RAV4s?
I haven't got the numbers right in front of me. I could look them up, but the RAV4 is one of the top 3 best-selling cars in Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, the big thing that BYD are doing is currently they sell the Seal, the Dolphin, and the Atto 3. And none of them are in a class of car that is on the top 10 bestsellers in Australia.
Yeah.
Now they're bringing in their Ute, the Shark, which is in the top best-selling category in Australia. Even though it's a plug-in hybrid, it's not that different for a buyer than if they're buying a petrol ute. That's just more economical than a petrol ute and goes faster than any petrol ute on the market in Australia. They're bringing in the RAV4 equivalent, and the RAV4 in last month was the second best-selling car in Australia.
Is that the RAV4 hybrid?
RAV4, well, the RAV4 is overall, but it's mostly the hybrid. It may have even been just the hybrid that made the list as the second best-selling car. I've got the data, but I have to look it up. The third best-selling car in Australia last month overall has been the Model Y. And they're bringing in an alternative to the Model Y as well, which this SeaLion 6 isn't the alternative to the Model Y, really. The SeaLion 7 is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it'll be very interesting to see how this goes.
So they're attacking the cars on the top list.
Yeah, that's much more sensible.
Suddenly moved from having nothing that attacks the top 10 to attacking almost everything that makes the top 10.
Yeah, I think that's a much better strategy from BYD. If they want to be a big player in the industry, they have to attack the top selling cars, not sedan market. So yeah. Oh, well, I think the only other thing I'm thinking of is, I don't know if I want to throw this one in there or not, but do you think people are still waiting for hydrogen?
Well, I mean, it's even got to the point where in California, the people who bought hydrogen cars are suing Toyota because it didn't live up to the promise and the hydrogen stations are shutting down.
Right. Yeah. And it must be very difficult to drive your car when you only got one or two hydrogen fuel stations to fill up with, and you can't fill up at home. So yeah, I don't.
Yeah, well, they also sold them in Canada, and of course in Canada they didn't bundle in free hydrogen in the sale, and the people suddenly found that it's about 3 times as expensive as petrol to fill up.
Oh well, that's the end of that. Yeah, I don't expect
in California, you got a huge allocation of free hydrogen, so you were immune to how expensive the hydrogen actually is.
Yeah, so we can say goodbye to hydrogen cars then. I don't think we'll ever see them.
But even the fuel stations, apparently they can only fill about 6 cars a day.
Right. Yep. So that's pretty well for anybody who's holding out for hydrogen. I don't think you should be waiting. It's not going to happen.
Oh, it's
certainly going to be very interesting.
The hydrogen so much to put in a car, it's problematic, and it's expensive for the car and expensive for the fuel. So the dream of car companies and fuel companies was you could be able to sell expensive hydrogen and expensive cars, but once EVs got practical enough to work, it just never made sense. In fact, making synthetic green fuel petrol is more practical than fueling cars with hydrogen.
Yeah. Right.
One of the things I have noticed when we talk about hybrid and EVs is I did talk to a lot of people who have got EVs, and I talked to a lot of people who got hybrids. One of the things I have noticed are the people with EVs understand the technology. They can talk about the engine, the motor, the battery, and all that. Really understand it. And this is generalisation. I know you talk to a hybrid person, they got no idea what's under the hood. All they know is when they take off at the lights, they got runs on battery sometimes, mate, and it runs on the engine, and they really don't know the technology. They just get in and drive it. Where an EV owner really does understand what's going on, which in general terms, that's what I've noticed.
Yes, we're talking about the role of comfort with technology, and probably the people who are more comfortable with technology are more likely to take the jump to an EV. So maybe it's the people who have the knowledge that buy the EVs to some extent or go into it.
So are you
saying done the research?
Are you saying only smart people buy EVs?
No, I'm saying that people who are interested in applying their smarts into that area.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody.
Some people buy cars purely on brand, so rather than technology. So
yeah, that's certainly true. That's certainly true in the Tesla world.
Anyway, well, BYD are going to be on the main playing field now, so I hope this one goes.
Do you want to touch on the Ute tool that's coming?
I haven't heard anything, so
it's just been released tomorrow at 2 a.m. Tomorrow, not today. Tomorrow in Mexico.
Tomorrow it's released in Mexico, and there'll be more talk about it. There's a lot of people talking about it already in Australia.
So it's a hybrid. Do you have the specs on that?
It's the same sort. It's a EV first hybrid. So in other words, it drives on the electric motors and primarily just uses the gas, the petrol engine as a charger that's carried around with the car to ensure that battery's charged. One of the things I have heard that people in discussions who are worried about these EV first hybrids, they say, but it won't have any power when the battery gets flat. But the battery will only get flat if the petrol motor doesn't work anymore. If you either run out of petrol, or the petrol motor is broken down. That's the only way the battery gets flat, because the main job of that petrol motor is to make sure the battery never gets flat.
So if the battery does get flat, will the will the petrol motor be able to put enough power in it for it to start being used, or do you have to wait a while?
Sorry, what's that?
So let's just assume the battery's gone flat for some reason. It's gone flat, and so it ran out of petrol, and, and the battery went flat, and you can't go anywhere. You fill it up with petrol. You start it up. Will the petrol motor be able to be putting charge into the battery at the same speed that the car's using it?
You need to wait. If you actually get a fully run out of petrol, so the petrol motor gets flat, then you drove your 80 k's of range you've got on the battery and couldn't get to a petrol station in time. So you've got the fact that when you do run out of petrol, you can still keep going until you run out of battery as well.
I'm just saying.
But if you run out of both, you're going to have to start the car in petrol and wait about 5 minutes before you drive.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, because the petrol motor is just a bit over 100 kilowatts, and then there's probably a conversion loss because you're probably charging your battery close to 100 kilowatts.
But remember that when it's generating power, you can use that generated power to power the electric motors and take off. But you've still got to have a bit in the battery before it will let you take off.
Right.
Yeah. So just looking at these photos here, it seems to be a it's a proper off-road four-wheel drive, is it?
Yeah, it seems to be very much a proper off-road four-wheel drive.
From all accounts,
it's using their DMO system, which is, it's ranked. The current vehicle, there's only one current vehicle they have running on DMO called the BAL5, but it's benchmarked against the Land Rover Discovery and the Mercedes G-Wagon. And of course, it can out-accelerate both of those, despite the fact that it still runs like the SeaLion 6 with a 1.5 litre petrol engine as the generator, but it's got 350 kilowatts of electric motor power, and it accelerates. And apparently in under 5 seconds, this one does. Oh no, that's the BAL5 does, not the U. The U won't be close.
So when you say it's DMO technology, is that the same as the Seal we've just been talking about?
No, it's a hybrid. It's a special setup for off-roading.
And can you give the audience some information about that?
I don't have that much about it, other than it's a special setup for off-roading, and it generates an enormous amount of electric power. But how it actually works under the hood, the details are pretty scarce.
So dual mode I is, what is it? Dual mode, and then I is
dual mode intelligent.
Yeah.
And DMO is dual mode off-road.
Dual mode off-road. And then there's DMP, which is it DMP as well? Dual mode performance?
There is DMP, which is dual mode performance, but they don't seem to bother with it much anymore. It's
right. The
DMI gives enough performance these days. So they haven't brought out a new DMP for some time.
Yeah. Oh, if we believe all the rhetoric, this thing's going to outperform any four-wheel drive ute at the moment. So we'll
It'll
see.
outperform the Ford Ranger Raptor, for example.
Yeah. So what's
outperform that in power? It has a slightly bigger tray. Whether it tows as much is not established yet. We'll see. But it gives you very good fuel economy and gives you performance.
What about price?
Not revealed yet. It's not on the market anywhere. Its global launch is in Mexico at 2 a.m. our time tomorrow.
Yeah. And
but that's not the price in Mexico.
When's it coming to Australia?
People in Australia.
When's it coming to Australia?
This year, apparently. But what month, we're not sure. Last I saw, I looked up, I follow the track every now and again, check what cars have been certified for sale in Australia. It's not on the list yet.
All right. I think we'll have to wrap that up now.
Yep.
So BYD have 2 contenders for the top spots in Australia. Let's hope that they are priced very well, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more BYDs on the road. Less diesels.
We'll have to do a follow-up once the price is revealed.
Yeah.
And the price will be revealed on the SeaLion 6 later this week.
Does anybody want to have a punt for the base model? Will it be a 40 grand base model?
I'd say mid 40s and maybe still below 50 for the 4-wheel drive, which puts it considerably cheaper than a RAV4. Which
that's going to be good if the performance one comes in below 50,000. I think that's going to be a good bet. So if we could do 40 and 50, I think that'll be really nice.
I don't think they'll be that far apart.
Yeah,
I think
maybe 45 and 50.
Yeah, the sweet spot in Australia seems to be late 40s, doesn't it?
Yeah. All right, we'll find out soon enough. So maybe we can have another video when we know a bit more about it.